Hi, everybody. It's a long walk. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shelley Moore. And speaking of geekdom, I'm an inclusion geek. Like, I am obsessed with inclusive education, if you know me at all. But, you know, this definition about inclusion and inclusive education didn't just come to me in the night. Like, this has been something that's evolved over, like, the last 12 years of my career. And so when I first started, like, I kind of got it, but then I was like, but I didn't get it enough to defend it. And so when I'm working with the kids who I represent, are the students who kind of need the most support in schools and students with developmental disabilities, especially in secondary. And if you guys have ever worked in a secondary school, you know there's a whole different can of worms when it comes. I mean, they're naturally compartmentalized buildings. And so I learned that I had to really refine my definition of inclusion because I would get zingers from people. Zingers all the time. And for a while I ducked them. And then I would be like, you know what, if I'm gonna advocate, if I'm gonna move forward in inclusive education, I have to be able to have these conversations. So one zinger that I would often get, and I still get to this day, is, you know, I'm trying to advocate for kids to get into classrooms, and the zinger I get is, why are they here? What are they gonna get out of science? They can't read, they can't write, like, why do they need to learn about the periodic table of elements? And before I could, like, articulate this, I would just get sassy and be like, why does anyone need to learn about the periodic table of elements? Smirk and walk away. So you can imagine how well that went over in my building. And so you can see, like, why this would be an important thing to develop. So anyways, over the last, like, decade or so, I've been, you know, learning about what this means to be an inclusive educator. And most of my learning actually has not come from books or classes or experts or teachers or professors, but from the kids that I work with. And so the story that I'm going to tell you today is about one particular student that I worked with who was a very, very early learning in my career, and I think very pivotal, because without this learning, I can guarantee you that I wouldn't be standing here right now. So I'm going to share this with you, and this is a story about a student that I worked with named Daniel. And it was, I met Daniel it was my second job. I got hired at a high school, and I was still fresh. Like, where you go and, like, you buy an outfit before your first day of school. Right? Kind of like this outfit that I bought for this event right now. And, thank you. And so, you know, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm showing up, and my nerves were quickly relieved when I walked in and was, like, so welcomed by this group of kids and staff. And so the job that I got was working with a caseload of about 15 students with developmental disabilities, and I had these two EAs who worked with me, and they were best friends with each other. And so often they would be referred to as one person. So their names were Sharon and Marlene, but we called them Sharon and Marlene. Where's Sharon and Marlene? I need Sharon and Marlene. Like, they were actually one person. And so I would always go to Sharon and Marlene if I ever needed anything. So anyways, so I'm getting to know all the kids, and I'm walking around, and everyone's awesome, but, like, in the corner of my eye, I'm like, there's a kid under the table in the corner of the classroom, and no one's acting as if this is strange. And so I'm like, just kind of keeping my eye on it. So I'm like, eventually I'm like, Sharon and Marlene, there's a kid under the table over there. And they laugh. They're like, oh, that's Daniel. What's he doing under the table? And they're like, because you're here. And I'm, what do you mean because I'm here? They're like, well, you're new. Like, he'll come out in good time. And then they kind of smirk at each other. And they're like, but if you can get him out, then you can stay. And I'm like, are they kidding? I don't think they're kidding. This kid is like the gatekeeper of special education. So I'm like, okay. You know what? I can accept the challenge. So I go over, kind of lean under. Hey, Daniel. But I should tell you a few things about Daniel. From what I knew from him at that moment, there's Daniel, he's under the table. And, you know, he's dealing with a lot of things. So Daniel had Down syndrome. Daniel was deafblind. Daniel had autism. Daniel also had a bin filled with about 300 newspaper flyers, and he also had a giant red dictionary. And so I'm seeing him, and this is all I know about him, right? So I'm just like, okay, so he did have some residual sight and hearing, but to get him to choose to look or hear you was the hard part. So you had to be flashy. So I go over, and I'm like, Daniel, hi, I'm Miss Moore. I'm really nice. Like, I'm a student whisperer. Come out. As you can imagine, I needed a new strategy. So, I'm like, Sharon and Marlene, what is he like? You know, like teenagers love food. Beef jerky, Captain Crunch. What does he love? They're like, oh, he loves Diet Coke. So I run across the store, I get a Diet Coke, and I'm like, oh, Daniel. And I wish you could see this from the bird's eye view because it was like his hand came out, grabbed the Diet Coke, pulls it under the table, and I was left, and I'm like, okay, next strategy. So I'm like, okay, next plan. So maybe we need to see that we have a similar interest. So I'm like, you know what? I like dictionaries. I can pretend that I like dictionaries. So I go get a dictionary, and this time I'm like, I need to get under the table with him because this bending over is not cutting it. So I actually get under the table, and I'm like, wow, Daniel, did you read this page? This is a really interesting page. But I'm watching him, and he's not reading it. What he's doing with it is he's feeling it. And I don't know if you've ever worked with kids who have sensory deficits. You know, they'll often find, well, I mean, to be honest, just things to occupy themselves and that feel good, right? And so he was taking the pages of the dictionary and flipping them so he could feel the fan on his cheek. And dictionary pages, they're really thin, like the pages of a Bible. So I mean, it was like feathers. So I'm like, I've never tried it. So I pick up the dictionary, and I was like, oh. I'm like, Sharon and Marlene, you gotta try this. And this is not one day, people. I mean, so that lasted for 3 days because I didn't want to stop. But Daniel was still not coming up from under the table. So I'm like, okay, I need a new strategy. I'm like, maybe we could support an interaction, you know, like a game, I don't know, Hungry Hippos, I don't know, something. So I'm like, Sharon Marlene, I need something that he likes to play. They look at each other. We got the perfect thing. He loves math. Numbers, adding. So this is my face in front of Sharon and Marlene. Oh, good idea. This is my face in my head. Math? Who likes math? Who wants to play math? And then I start thinking, but how do you even know that he likes math? He doesn't talk. He doesn't read. He doesn't see. He can't hear. How could you possibly even know that he likes math? He is knee-deep in newspapers. But I keep my thoughts to myself because I'm a new teacher that has learned to do so. And this is how it went. So Sharon and Marlene gave me my flashcards, and under the table I go and had a conversation with myself. So, Daniel, what is 10 plus 20? What? Did you say 30? Oh my, you are so brilliant. This went on. But what he's doing beside me is he's just totally in his dictionary. Flip, 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 flip. Stop for a minute. Flip, 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 while I'm having a conversation with myself. Finally, I put a flashcard down. And I'm like, hey, Daniel, what's 20 plus 60? What? Okay, so you can imagine that he's probably getting as irritated as I am of myself. And he let me know it by smacking me across the face. A total backhand in my face, head hits the table, my eyes are tearing, my nose is swollen, and I'm like, I don't think you're allowed to hit teachers. So I'm holding my face, I'm like, oh! So I'm after the shock, and I'm like, should I go? Should I stay? Should I get the principal? What do I do? But I actually didn't have to answer this question too long, because when I peered through the fingers holding my face together, I saw him pointing at something. And I'm like, no way. And I looked closer, and sure enough, he was pointing to the page number 80. And I was like, OMG. So I put down another flashcard. Flip, 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 stop, point. Sure enough, it's the answer with the page number. So I'm like, whoa, we have connection. Flashcard, 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 flashcard. And sure enough, every single one, he would stop and answer the question. This totally blew my mind, because I was thinking, I'm like, how long has he been doing that for? So I get out from under the table, and sure enough, guess who follows me from under the table? Daniel comes out from under the table. And Sharon and Marlene are like secretly, quietly cheering in the background, so it was a really great day. But I realized it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with him. And so I think about this all the time, and I was like, after my swelling went down, and was reflecting. This is really hard for me to admit right now, because I would never say this now, but 10 years ago, I'm going to be really brutally honest, I didn't think he could do it. There's no way. He is too autistic, he is too deaf, he is too blind, he is way too disabled to be able to do math. How could he possibly do math? There's no way. These are the kids that we expect to have a functional existence. We don't teach them math for a reason, right? And then after thinking about this, I realized that I'm like, he's not the one that's too anything. It was me. I was too ignorant. I was too unmindful. I was too assuming, because he was trying to communicate with me the entire time. It was me that had the wall up. It was me that wasn't listening. So this was really, really profound, because I think about, how many times we do this to kids, to be like, they can't do it, they won't do it. That's that saying that just I hate, these kids are too low. They can't do it. And so you can see how this would impact me every single day with the kids that I work with, but the teachers that I work with and the people on the street, this underlying belief, do we believe that people are competent? And so there's another zinger that often comes my way, and it's about this idea of the real world. You can't do that. That's not in the real world. You need to do this. This is the real world. And there's something about all of this that really resonates to me, because I'm like, whose real world? Because that implies there's only one real world, right? And, when I'm thinking about Daniel and I look him under the table, he was in his world, and I had my world. And what was magical was in our worlds connected. But what did we need to connect? We needed something that wasn't words. We needed something that we both understood in a way, and for us, it was the dictionary. And then we could, build that trust and include each other and learn from each other and see how we have different abilities to teach each other. And I think if you're not willing to open up and understand what this looks like from different perspectives and different lenses and different abilities and different genders and different languages and cultures, your world is going to be so small. So I challenge you to think about, when you're having those hard days with those kids, think what's the dictionary that you need so that your worlds can come together? But there's still one more lesson, and this is the lesson that really, really hit home for me, and this is the one that I hope that you hold on to, is that there's this idea, and I mentioned it before, of competence, and that, if we're moving forward in 21st century learning and teaching to diversity and strength-based learning and la, the underlying thing for all of this is that we have to believe that people are competent. We have to trust that all people can learn. Because what I realize is that if you don't presume competence, it's us who are the people who are disabled. Thank you. Thank you.